I'm Julianne, and I am so thrilled to be joined by three incredible activists. And I think that something about our current moment is that we have all woken up and checked Instagram, checked Twitter, and it almost is like the news sends us spiraling on top of everything that has sent us spiraling yesterday. It's a brand new news cycle every single day, and it can be stressful. And what we want to talk about today is balancing the challenge of activism and being realistic and really authentic about what goes into it, how it can be exhausting, overwhelming, and rewarding at the same time. So I would love for my panelists to introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Deja Fox. I'm 22 years old. I'm an Aries. I'm a student here at Columbia University. I'll be in my senior year next year. I'm the founder of Gen Z Girl Gang. I am an activist and a strategist who got my start advocating for sex education reform in my Arizona school district and have since grown my work.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aleri Jayoba. I'm 24, Tara's son. I'm a theorist, an organizer, and I'm a strategist at the New York Times. And then I'm also the founder of an organization called Code Red Co., and we promote period literacy through education and aid.
Hi, everyone. Is this on? Can you hear? Yes. Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia Ongele. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Virgo sun. I am a digital strategist as well. I also develop coding like websites and apps and things like that. Hashtag women in STEM. Yeah. Anyways, I'm a computer science major and a political science double major because I hate myself. But I also work, it's hard, double majoring is rough. Anyways, I work for an organization called Gen Z for Change, which is an organization, it's a coalition of around 500 different social media creators, and we work to push progressive change into the landscape and allow Gen Z to have a really big leadership moment there.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here. I know we're all going to leave feeling like we've got some next steps under our feet. So my first question for you all is, what is your process like in thinking about how to effect change when so many issues feel so huge and so daunting?
Yeah, my best advice that I can give is to get personal. So, like I said, I got my start advocating around sex education reform in my school district, and it can be really that small, you know. I was someone who's experiencing hidden homelessness, which means not having a home of your own, and it's actually something that 1 in 30 teens in the US goes through. And so I was sitting in this sex ed classroom listening to this super outdated, medically inaccurate information, knowing that there was no one at home that was going to fill in those gaps. And so I thought about how that was personally impacting me, right? This was an issue that was something I was seeing in the news, something I was hearing about that was also intersecting with my own life. So I thought about what was personally impacting me. Then I learned how to use my story, right? I started practicing how to share my narrative. And so I used my story, my personal story, as an agent of change making. And then I brought my friends along. I said, hey, will you come with me to the school board meeting? I brought my neighbors in. And so that was about how I engaged my personal network. And so when it feels really big, when you're seeing all of this stuff in the news, I want to challenge you to ask, where does this intersect with my life, right? What issues are personally impacting me? What is my personal story? How can I use my narrative as an agent of change making? And then who can I bring along? Because the people who care about you are going to care about what you care about.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like a lot of the time activism can be very daunting because you see all of these individual figures come out like Malala and Greta Thunberg. But in reality, all of these activists have a really great support system that is with them along the way. So one of the great things about my organization is that we're a ton of different people who have different interests and different skill sets, and we are able to work together crossing boundaries, whether it be like with our identity and our experiences. That diversity there, I think, is really, really impactful. Moreover, I think that, you know, like, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to attempt to do every single thing. I totally resonate with what Deja was saying. I got my start going to city council meetings, and I think realizing like the crazy stuff that might be going on at home intersects with a very large national landscape. So I think keeping it personal is also very important, totally.
Yeah, and I feel like life itself is very daunting, especially when you are part of the oppressed. So like oppressed people, the world has always been on fire for them. And I feel like we have a lot to learn from like our community members. They have a lot to teach us, and we also have a lot to share. So I think like starting in your community, being engaged with your neighbors, your community members, and like teaching what you can share, and then also just learning what they have to offer, the healing practices that they have to offer, because they've known what the end of the world looks like, is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to all of your points of finding something that's personal to you and something that you can make change with and that is going to impact you so that you can have a larger impact. With that said, though, how do you protect your energy when you are working with something so personal? How do you set that boundary with your activism work and your personal?
I think so I see a therapist
Same.
and a psychic and like a healer person, and like I have the privilege in my life right now to do that, but before I can't say that I did. Like, it was hard. But I think like also just like partaking in pleasure and like enjoyment and like making sure that I am enjoying myself is really important, because a lot of us who are doing the work like grassroots organizing, it's like hard to find that enjoyment because a lot of us do not have like material wealth or privileges, certain privileges. So I think like just partaking in any enjoyment that I can or anything that is pleasurable to me is super important. Engaging in stuff that makes me happy, because the world does not want me to be happy, and engage in pleasurable activities and enjoy myself and really just engage with my five senses. So I think that's always been something that's really, really important to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like personally, like sleep is the biggest thing on the planet for me. Like after 10 p.m., you will not find me. I will be in my bed because I don't want to get Alzheimer's, and there's a connection with not getting sleep and Alzheimer's. So y'all should get your sleep. And it's very important to me to get the full 8 hours, because like there's this idea with activists that you just have to keep going all the time when there's a major issue. Like when the Roe v. Wade. When the draft dropped, like a lot of my friends and I, we were on a Zoom until like 10 p.m. Again, I clocked out exactly 10 p.m. I was not going to work longer than that. But I think rest itself can be really radical because you're protecting your ability to truly make the best change that you can. So I think sleep is everything. Love sleep.
Yeah, I also think community is really important to insulating you. Not every one of us has a different position, right? Whether it's because of the identities that we hold or the talents that we have, there's no need to contort yourself to do everything and be everything, right? Like, I don't need to be over here fighting with certain people about my own existence, right? There's someone else who maybe could fight that fight with me or beside me. I often think about, my experiences in a high school classroom, like, why was I fighting those teachers? Where were my white peers at? You know what I mean? And so knowing your own position, knowing when to just take a step back and say, this is not my fight right now. This is not my position. Someone else can own this. Pushing your friends to step up, letting your community show up for you, I think can be really important. And also, like I said, don't contort yourself. If you're a creative, be a creative. Find ways to create graphics on behalf of, the nonprofit in your hometown. If you're a photographer, show up to that protest and take those pictures, right? You can show up exactly as who you are and have something to offer.
Yeah, I think that's important to set yourself up for success in that way too. And you can't do it without the support of your loved ones as well as a good night's rest. And with that, I think one of our big questions, especially as young people, is what are examples of activism that are accessible for students and for young people, and how can they get involved in that space?
I think it really goes back to exactly what Deja was saying, that like you find what you're good at and contribute that to either an existing organization or bring your friends together and make one of your own, exactly like Deja did. Like with me, because I'm a frickin' nerd, I code, that's my thing, I make websites and stuff. So recently one of the ones like Governor Glenn Youngkin in Virginia made like an anti-CRT tip line. So as a coder, my friends and I coded a little website to blow it up with a bunch of lines from the Bee Movie and song lyrics. Yeah, I did. So it doesn't have to be this ginormous, huge thing. You just take your community, have them support you. We all have different skills. Like someone on our team made graphics for it. I made the website. Someone made a video to help it blow up. Like you really it doesn't have to be these huge things. Then also there's so many amazing organizations that are always looking for volunteers, especially Deja reposted today. Sorry, I'm hyping up Deja. I mean, you guys should follow her if you don't. But with like abortion, for example, it's easy to feel very, very powerless when you're young. You don't necessarily have a horse in this race. But there's so many organizations out there that really do want the help and need the help. Like I Need an A. So it's really just a matter of like going out there, finding an organization. Just take a couple hours out of your week, or just an hour out of your week, and just lend whatever skills that you personally can.
I also think like knowing your neighbors, knowing your community, knowing the resources that are available in your community, being able to share those resources with others. Like, who do you know around you that is in need of help? How can you offer whatever services or skills that you have to help them? What resources do you know that are available that you can share and not gatekeep? I think those are like really important on the small scale as well. And I also think something that's important is remembering all the people who have given you the wisdom that you have now to be able to share. So citing people, remembering like who to name that like gave you your wisdom or what you know, so that like, you know, it takes a community to really like become the person you are and like raise the knowledge that you have. And so I think like that's really important, just to like show that like this is not just you alone. Like there's a lot of people that have like educated you and shown you how to do things. And I think I take that with me like everywhere I go. Like everything I know is the product of someone's labor, like a Black woman's labor specifically, but like the product of everybody's labor.
Period.
Yeah, that is so true. And as I think about what is accessible, right, that's sort of the way the question was framed to young people. I also think about that relationship to millennials or Gen Xers, right? And that what is available to us is not always just about what we have the skills or the experience to do. It's often about what those people in older generations, those people who are holding the opportunities, will allow us to do, will allow us to be, right? And so I actually want to shout out Mina Harris, who was up here earlier, who was a big part of that for me, who absolutely showed up for me. And as many of you know, right, I worked on the Kamala Harris campaign when I was just 19. I worked as a digital strategist. And what has always really mattered to me, especially when I sit in rooms full of young people like this, is to remind you all that you have a really unique kind of expertise. So many of you are the first generation to grow up with a phone in your hand, right? To be like native to these digital technologies, and you are the experts in it. Like nobody is getting a PhD in TikTok, right? Like it's you're the expert. And so as we think about what opportunities are accessible to high schoolers and to college students, I think we also need to be pushing those people in power, those people who are older than us, to see us as qualified and to make space for us and our expertise. And to be shouting out those that do the good work and make space for young people in that perspective.
I think that's important, that last note that you just said about making space for more people and for others. And I think there is space, especially for everybody, to get involved in what matters to them. And social media has come up a little bit, and I think a huge way that causes and problems get talked about is on social media. And there's a little bit of a buzzword going around with performative. And I would love to ask, what are some ways to participate in activism online that are useful and that are going to help start conversation that aren't performative?
I have like a lot of thoughts on this. I just feel like social media itself is performative. So we're all curating like a performance for people. So I think like the question is like, how do we challenge that? Because the platform was made to perform. My social media, it's like, I do perform on that. I curate what you guys see. Even if I'm being authentic, it's still curated. So I think like, how do I challenge that? And how am I like offering resources that I can provide? Like, what am I doing in the real life to support and help people? I think that's like how I count on what's genuine. And I think like, when this question is usually asked, like it becomes like a competition of like who's more genuine, or like, oh my God, my platform is more genuine. But we're all performing, and I think like we need to be very attentive at like what we are convincing our followers to do and like what we are leading our followers to do. I think we need to be very like precise and like thorough with what we are posting so that people are not like led astray. Because we live in an attention economy, and like people like, to have a platform is to grab people's attention. So what are we leading their attention to?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And I think it also speaks to the responsibility that each and every one of us has, right? Whether we have one follower or 1 million followers, those are people who are invested in us, who are bought into what we have to say, right? Why else would they follow you unless they cared about what you were saying? And so I think we each need to acknowledge that we have a responsibility, especially as we look towards this midterm election that's upcoming, right? As we look towards the Supreme Court decision that's soon gonna drop. There is so much mis and disinformation out there, and we each have a responsibility to share information that is true and that is helpful and to lead people to action, right? That at the end of the day, social media is and always has been a tool. So it is about what are you going to use it for. Also, to just speak directly to the question about being performative, I will tell you one thing that is performative, and that's calling out who is performative, right? Like that is absolutely a performance. That is not activism. And it has never been my style to say who is or is not doing a good job, has never put food on someone's table, has never, like given someone access to birth control, and that is not the work, right? Calling each other out, tearing each other down in public, not the work. And that is not to say that there is not room for constructive criticism, that we shouldn't be calling each other in and having conversations with people we are actually in community with. But I've always, kind of believed that if you see something and it's not being done well, do it better. Have that conversation. If there's someone in your movement space, someone who you share community with, talk to them. But I think one thing we could all do is create an internet culture where we give each other the space to learn and to grow and create new strategies. And I think, we're all in like a youth activism space, like youth as in learning, as in young people, so.
Yeah, I completely agree. Social media, at the end of the day, it's a medium, it's a tool. And while like this term performative is like up and coming and kind of everywhere, like there is a certain amount of value in performance. Like for example, that guy who literally, the environmental activist who set himself on fire in front of, I think it was the Supreme Court, I don't know, something like that. While that is performance, it gets people talking, right? Like this idea of having conversations, like you had said, with people who are in your community. Like oftentimes when you're posting something, whether it be like political or activisty on one of your social channels, it will oftentimes spark conversation with people who may not necessarily agree with you, people from back home, things of that nature. And I think that's a really important conversation to have. But of course, at the same time, there's the idea of like actions speak louder than words. But I think as long as you are living the values of what you're putting out there, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's important, is to Larry's point earlier, giving credit to where that post came from and making sure it is aligned with you. And I think that's really almost like a breath of fresh air of it's okay to be posting, and no one is going to call you out. And if they are, that's not creating the activism community that is going to push things forward in a healthy, productive way. The other thing with social media is it is everywhere and it's all the time. And so it's almost as if you're consistently learning something new every time you pop on, even if you're just trying to see your friends on Instagram or TikTok. And it can lead to a feeling of burnout almost. How do you deal with feelings of burnout when there's so much going on?
It can be really rough to like give yourself the time, because like fully in 2020, if we all remember the summer of 2020, especially my Black girls out there, like it was rough. It was so rough to see yourself and people like you being brutalized on a daily basis. And people would pop up in my comments and be like, why aren't you talking about this Black person who died? I'm like, bro, I'm grieving. Like, give me the space to be a human being, right? And at first it was really hard. Like, it's because it is in part my job. Like, I do make money posting things on social media. But I also sort of wanted to, take a step back after that summer, or actually after the election. I kept going till the election. Give myself the space to step back and be like, I'm not like a piece to be commodified by other people. Like, I'm a human being. I'm putting my labor out there for other people to consume, and I deserve a break. And I've taken multiple breaks from social media. And, sometimes there can be hella trolls, and I think that the block button is a beautiful feature. Like, it's amazing. Like, if people are out there, like, draining my energy, I will hit that block button. So I think it's really about, like, sheltering yourself and treating yourself as a human being, because I think growing up in this social media atmosphere, literally going through puberty on social media, which is crazy, has sort of changed our minds in a really gross way. And I think it's important to like remember that we're humans and we're not just who we are on the internet.
Yeah, I will admit that I'm not like great at this, right? I too kind of had to grow up in public. I went viral for the first time when I was 16, and my life was kind of just like public ever since then. And it was actually not really my choice in the first place, right? I was confronting my senator about birth control access, about the funding that I directly used. Someone else recorded me, someone else posted it, woke up the next day with 17 million views and a completely different life. And so I think there's something to be said about hypervisibility as well that we're all experiencing, right? Whether you post videos to TikTok, you never really know who's gonna see them, right? Like you could get 1 million views, you could get 100. And I think we're all existing within a framework of hypervisibility that like has just never really existed before. And that we should acknowledge that that is true. That we are living in a world that is completely different from the world that our parents grew up in, that our guidance counselors, our therapists, our professors grew up in, and acknowledge that like we really have to care for each other and learn new methods of care because this constant availability, right? Your boss emailing you at midnight and expecting a response, or people commenting, why aren't you saying something about this? And it going directly to your phone while you're lying in bed. No one has ever been that available. No one has ever been this visible before. And I'm not sure that humans were meant to be. So it is really on us to create those communities of care and those practices of care to meet this moment.
Yeah. I was thinking about this question and like what you guys both said. So I'm also thinking about summer 2020, very burnt out, had been protesting. I also called somebody out too, lots of people out, because sometimes we need to question people, and I think like we also need to question their performative activism. Because like times people do be harming others, and it's just like I was burnt out from like calling people out, protesting, making sure my community's needs were met. And I think like it was in that moment too where it's like everyone was like, why aren't you posting this? Why aren't you posting this? Can you help me post this? Can you help me post that to promote this issue? And I just kind of got burnt out, and that's kind of when I took like my social media break. And I think now I only put myself in spaces where my needs are being met because I feel love when my needs are being met. That's what I know. And I know like people that love me aren't always capable of meeting my needs because they're struggling or they're going through whatever. But I need community members who can help me meet my needs. I need support. I need that because I get burnt out and I get tired and I run out of time. And so like if someone could just lend a hand, it helps me tremendously. So I make sure that I have community members who can help me out. Like when I need a mental health break, help me with my social media. Like when I literally was protesting and like calling people out, I had my friends support me like on my social media. I didn't have to deal with it all. And I never felt such like a big like help in my community because that was such a big deal for me. So yeah, I thought that was like very necessary for me. So I think like surrounding yourself by people who can meet your needs where you're at is really important, especially when you're burnt out, because people are not checking for you usually, and they're not looking to see, are you okay? Like who's in your group who's asking you if you're okay, because that's important. Yeah.
They kind of fill your gaps for you a little bit, where they can prop you up sometimes, even if you're not necessarily in a state where it's like you can feel like you can keep going, and they can help you. And I think that's really important to have that community, and so many of us find our communities by joining causes that mean a lot to us. So I'm curious, in your opinion, do you think it's best to find one cause and dive in there, to get involved in multiple? What advice would you give to somebody who wants to join but isn't quite sure which cause, because so many of them do feel personal and so many of them do feel impactful as well?
I kind of want to start off here to say that maybe you don't have to pick and choose, right? And that so many of our causes are not a single lane because we don't live these like single lane lives. And so just to get from my personal perspective, right, I was brought in to the work that I do through the Reproductive Justice Framework, which was a framework created by Sister Song and created by Black women like Loretta Ross that says that, this framework around choice, that it's, having access to or having legality for abortion or not is not enough. that it's about access, and it's about being able to raise the children we do want to have in healthy and thriving communities that are free from gun violence, free from police brutality, free from the threat of climate change, right? That all of that is wrapped up into what it means to have reproductive justice, and they are not separate issues, that they are our issue. And so I think even if you find something, do a little digging, do a little reading, really get into who has done this work before me, what are the frameworks that already exist to understand this, be in community, find people who have been doing it longer, and I think you will often find that most of these movements are not single issue movements at the end of the day, because we don't live single issue lives.
I agree with that. Like, everything is like interconnected, and I think like it goes back to what you're saying, like what can you contribute like with your skills, the skills that you do have. I also am just going to say this again, like tap into your neighborhood, your community, like what's going on there, what are the issues there. Like I think like that's super important. And I also think challenging yourself, like what are the things that you think about that you need to start questioning yourself, like questioning the things that you do, the habits you have, and engaging in healing, and your own healing as well is super important. Like, what are the habits that you have that you probably shouldn't have? Because, you know, you show up as the unhealed person you are if you're not like working on your healing process. And I think that really impacts your family, impacts your community, impacts your neighbors. So I think like challenging yourself, working on your healing process, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And like also just like nurturing your community members and like contributing your skills that you have to like, and the resources you have to different, you know, initiatives and like things that are happening in your community.
Yeah, I totally agree with what both of you said. I feel like personally, it's like I am a fire rising. I'm a Sag rising. So I'm such a reactionary person. I get so pissed so easily. Not easily, but like when I read the news. And so like when I was like 16 and I was going to like city council meetings and stuff, like I was just finding what was lighting a fire under my butt. Like I was just so angry with so many things that were happening. And more often than not, exactly as Deja was saying, they all really intersect with each other. Because while I found myself at first in like the sort of education/immigration sphere, it sort of has gone all over because all of these issues at their core are building off of each other. They're all the same subjugatory systems that are playing off of each other to continue oppression against marginalized communities. So I think finding like something that makes you damn angry and then just running with it, I think is the easiest way to go. And then also because, you know, like anger as an emotion, like it serves a purpose, but it doesn't necessarily serve your energy. And if you want to preserve your energy, like I really like channeling my anger into action, so at least I can be like, I did something about this and I feel like a productive person, like doing something about the things that are making me actively incredibly angry.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that. So let's say you have found something that does make you damn angry. Do you think it's best to get involved at a local level or a national level? And are there pros and cons of picking one over the other? Can you do both? Can you just share a little bit about your experience with both local and national?
I would say address what's going on in your body first, the emotions that are there, and try to feel what's in your body, meditate, do what you need to do, and then start being like, okay, what are the actions that I can do right now? Yeah, and I would say like, start on a local level. But there are like organizations like on a nationwide level that you can join and contribute your skills to. But I always like, my way of doing it is starting on the local level.
Yeah, I mean, I also got my start on a local level, and then sort of that work ballooned into national work. But I think the advice that I would give my younger self, and it was advice that I was given, is that as someone who uses storytelling as a means of activism, right? As someone who's constantly sharing bits and pieces of myself, because like I said, I do work that is personal to me, that is actually about my own personal experience, my own personal access. I'm giving a lot. And so the advice that I would give is to do what is uncomfortable but not unsafe. So I think about that 15-year-old who walked into a school board meeting for the first time, had never shared her experiences about homelessness, who was actively living it, and who stood there with like a Post-it note crying in front of her school board members, and how that same girl a year later was ready to go toe-to-toe with a senator, right? Was ready to go live on CNN the next day and then show up on Capitol Hill and lobby because I had done what was uncomfortable again and again and again, and I had expanded my skill set. I had risen to the moment. And so I think all too often we are pushed, especially as young people who sometimes are being tokenized, pushed into the front and not always given the chance to grow and to refine our skills and to like really grow that space of discomfort while also remaining safe in what we're sharing. So, you know, if you're ever thinking about what do I share, how do I choose, do what's uncomfortable but not unsafe. And that can be true of what you know, the stories you share or the spaces you share them in, the people you share them with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, you know, injustice anywhere begets injustice everywhere. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter insanely where you're making the change as long as it's something that feels close to you. I think also starting on the local level is really great because you learn a lot about the systems that you're not taught about in school. Like, I was able to understand like different municipal codes. Like, the fact that I know the word municipal at like the age of 15 was crazy to me. But like learning how that works, and then once you sort of acquaint yourself there, it's easier to get started at the national level because you have a better understanding of how these systems operate. Like, I was learning about like different economical things at that level, and then the other day I was at like a Senate hearing for Bernie Sanders' new Social Security Expansion Act, and like the little economic terms made sense to me, even though I haven't taken an econ class. So I really think it's a matter of like Deja said, like, definitely don't put yourself in like unsafe situations, things that are gonna like make you feel like you're really not preserving your energy well, but just, I really think making change anywhere is making a change.
Well, and all three of you have such a wealth of knowledge from activism starting locally, going nationally. And I'd love to take time, if there are any questions in the audience, we have time for a handful, I believe. So feel free, and Haley will come around with a mic. One back here, then we'll get back to you.
So I wanted to know, so you mentioned the summer of 2020, and I wanted to know, how did you deal with that grief? Because I know that it was something that everyone felt, that there was nothing like it. From across the country, even across the world, people were feeling it.
It was awful. I'm sure that like everyone who is Black in the audience knows that it was a really awful experience. Me personally, I'm from Santa Clarita, California. If you haven't heard of it, maybe you've heard of Santa Clarita Diet, but like it's like a white flight suburb, very conservative, some like 70% white, and there was a Black Lives Matter protest there. I honestly like wasn't comfortable going because it's just not a community where we are accepted and able to, you know, make ourselves known. Like my aunt and my uncle, when I was like 4 years old, they were in an interracial relationship and their house got totally like, not destroyed, but like graffitied by like Nazis from the area. So it's hard because you really want to conserve your energy, but at the same time, you're so angry and you want to do something. And I do think that it is possible to do both. I think it's very possible to, you know, take multiple days off the internet where people are actively showing videos upon videos of yourself and your people being brutalized. And then also like taking time with your family. I was very lucky that it was during quarantine that I was like in the space with my sisters and my mom, and we could really digest this all together. So I think from that perspective, that's good. But then also like any non-Black allies, like maybe don't repost trauma porn. Like the videos and the pictures of like someone being kneeled on. I do think that the visibility has value, but then also like remembering that like your POC friends are really in pain right now, and they're really, really trying hard to digest the fact that it's 2020 and, well, now it's 2022, and people still don't value our lives equally as everyone else's. So I think, you know, like, really take the time for yourself. Like, don't force yourself to go to work. Like, literally just be like, I need a mental health day. Like, and if they don't support you doing that, maybe find a different employer. Yeah, I think give yourself the space to be human for sure.
Yeah, great question. When you asked it, my body like changed. I like shook a little bit. But yeah, I'm still dealing with the grief. I'm not like sure how to how like to overcome like anti-Blackness. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like something you live with grief every day. 2020 was a lot. Like I got arrested for peacefully protesting. I protested like a lot, and then I also like called a lot of people out. It was very stressful on my body, and I'm still recovering from that. But yeah, I don't really have like any advice on how to like recover from the grieving process, besides the fact that it takes time. And like that's why, like as I mentioned before, I don't let anyone in my community who cannot help me fulfill my needs, because it's like I have a lot of needs that need to be met right now, and I need to be nurtured as a person because I'm coming from like such like a hard place right now. So I think like it takes time, and then also just like try to surround yourself by people who are loving you by fulfilling your needs.
Well, thank you all so much for your time and for your answers. We have to move on, unfortunately, but so many questions. Feel free to come find us later. And I just want to thank all three of you again for taking your time and your energy to speak with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.